And hello, everyone. Joined by Jasmine Jimenez right now, a very special woman who has had a very special son, an amazing story. Thank you for taking the time. And I just want to start out by saying, my family, all of us watching, our hearts and prayers go out to all of you.
Thank you so much. And I can't thank you enough for, inviting me and asking me to be on the show about my son.
Yeah, and a lot of your friends and family tagged me, and I'm sorry I didn't see the messages because Facebook can be bad. But tell me about, and I'm going to play a video we have of some pictures. But tell me about your son from the minute you were pregnant and you got kind of what some would say bad news from the very beginning. But I want to talk about the beginning. So you found out you were pregnant with this little guy right here on the screen, and
That's my
you
baby.
got news kind of in the beginning that there were some complications?
Yes. So at my 20-week maternal fetal scan with my son, they had let me know that his heart had some holes in him and he was very underdeveloped. And I would have to go back in 2 weeks for a follow-up scan to do some more testing on his growth and see, how he's progressing. But within those 2 weeks, at 22 weeks, my water broke prematurely, which it's referred to medically as PPROM. So it's the premature rupture of your membranes, which
Oh,
is, yes. So essentially, all the amniotic fluid in where he was enclosed in was gone. My son was in my stomach with little to no fluid, and I was admitted to Covenant Healthcare here in Saginaw from 22 weeks gestation until I gave birth to Carter prematurely at 25 weeks and 3 days.
wow. And at that time, did the medical professionals tell you that he's may not make it very long, or what did they say?
So essentially, my son was never supposed to survive. He was born 1 pound, 5 ounces, 11 inches long. He had heart conditions. His lungs were underdeveloped. The steroid, the medications, they assisted, but he was sick. My son was very sick. So I was taken into the consultation room, and I had one of the worst conversations ever that a parent does not want to hear. That my son might not make it through the night. And what did I want to do? Did I want to just let things happen, or do I want to fight? And I chose to fight for my son.
Yeah, because, and I don't know, and this is where you hear everyone has their own. I mean, it's a life. He's
Yes.
a human being, and he made it, and he made it through that night,
Yes.
obviously.
Yep.
And throughout his life, did he have surgeries, or what? Explain that.
So my son stayed in the NICU here in Saginaw between Saginaw, and then I was essentially transferred down to Mott's during March of 2022 when good old COVID hit.
Oh
So,
boy.
yep. So my son was essentially supposed to have heart surgery back in March, but that's when the world shut down and U of M stopped taking non-emergent situations. And at that point in time, my son was not considered emergent enough. He was just waiting to have his heart repaired in order to essentially come home. So we were transferred down to Mott's in April, at the end of April of 2020, once things sort of, lessened up and once they actually were accepting outside transfers. And on May 1st of 2020 was when my son had his first open heart surgery. And I say first because he has had 3 open heart surgeries, with the transplant that he received being his fourth.
Wow. And it brings us to, was it earlier this week he passed away at the age of 4?
Yes. So my son passed away December 27th, a few days ago. He received his transplant at Mott's on December 18th. Um, I got the call in the middle of the night, 3:30 in the morning, and I was in Saginaw because my daughter had a choir recital. So I was splitting my time up between my 4-year-old at Mott's and then my 16-year-old back home. So I was stretched very thin, but I got the call and I rushed down there. His surgery was essentially scheduled for 12 p.m. that day, but it got pushed back to 8 p.m. So the surgery itself lasted 14 hours.
Wow, a
And
heart transplant.
heart transplant. There
Of
were,
a
yeah.
child. I mean, is that amazing? And that they even, how is that another? I mean, that's amazing in itself. How that probably all works. I have no idea. I mean,
So I know the prep time prior to surgery takes a few hours, and then also him getting out of recovery and making sure he's stable, that took a couple hours also. So
okay.
I seen my son essentially the next day at 10:30 in the morning, and he was already trying to come up out of sedation because he heard me talking and he was opening his eyes. But within 24 hours, things took a turn for the worse. He did not reject his heart. His heart was accepted into his body, and he spiked a fever overnight, and then he lost all reflexes to his body. He stopped responding to the neurological checks. Essentially, my son had suffered a traumatic brain injury.
After with the new heart okay, so something happened.
There was something that happened, and I have no answers. Yep, there's no explanation on what happened, because how does a 4-year-old go in for a heart transplant but essentially pass away from a traumatic brain injury?
So it wasn't the heart
No.
that killed him. It was, and there had been no issues with the brain at all. It was all heart related.
Yeah, my son had had a history of seizures, but he was on medication with seizure
Yeah.
medication. He was on medication for seizures. And essentially that next 24 hours was when my son, um, he was gone. And it took me 10 days to wait on testing and family and, coming to terms with, this is not the life for a 4-year-old. He would never open his eyes. He would never function. He would never be my son.
This is horrible because you and everyone who supports him thought this is great news. He's getting a heart transplant, and that apparently went fine. But then it was something else that happened, and so everyone goes from being very excited to then this happening.
Yep.
So I just and I want to ask you, how are you even sitting here today? You said you're keeping yourself busy. You believe in God. I know He is in a much better place now, especially with the way the world's going. Um, how do you do it? How do you? I couldn't imagine being you. How are you staying so strong?
I don't know. I have my family here. My family is very supportive. My daughter, she's my rock. I can't fall. I can't crumble. I have somebody else to take care of, and I made peace with my son. I was blessed for 4 years to be his mother and call him my son, and I spent every day leading up to his death laying with him in his bed and just telling him, I'm sorry. I wish I could have done more. And it just I just told him, I would rub his head and I said, Carter, if you're ready to go, it's okay. I will stop being selfish. And
You said, and you wouldn't do anything differently when it comes to. I was when they told you even before he was born what could be or what could be, some people might opt to, abort, or there's been many situations, but you said you would not do anything different. He made an entire difference in this world. What's your take on that? That basically he changed your life, but a lot of other people's.
he changed my perspective on life because I would do everything the same, knowing what I know now. He, they give you all these scary diagnoses, cerebral palsy, which he did. He had spastic cerebral palsy. He had congenital heart failure. He had just every diagnosis that a parent does not want to hear. Um, but he was my son. And I was his biggest voice, his biggest advocate, because he was autistic. He's nonverbal. So he couldn't speak for himself, but he had
Wow.
different ways of expressing himself. But I was his voice. I will continue to be my son's voice.
This and I can't imagine everything that happened. We talked earlier before we were recording, insurance companies just probably dropped you or they didn't want any part of it because of the expense. This had to have destroyed you financially. I mean, and that's why I want to be able to help you. And I'm going to put a link for those of you who are watching. I have a link in the video in the post wherever you're watching this on. Click that link. It's going to be a GoFundMe to help out because you probably been just financially destroyed because of this. I mean, I know it's just horrible.
I have had to, I had a good job. I was working at CMU surgery.
Oh
I
wow.
had to essentially leave that position to be with my son. And
Yeah.
when he had his open heart surgery and first came home, so he spent 177 days within the hospital between his birth and his first initial day coming home. So I had to stop working. I it's and with insurances, he had Medicaid just because of everything, state Medicaid. He had Medicaid. But
Yeah.
life insurance policies, I was never able to get a life insurance policy just because my son was so sick. There were so many diagnoses. As soon as you mentioned heart failure, not a heart disease, I'm referring to heart failure. They, it was just a disqualifier. I called insurance company after insurance company trying to get a life insurance policy. And me being a full-time mother and a caregiver, because at that point he was being on tube feedings. He was being tube fed every 3 to 4 hours, like
Yeah.
24 hours a day. So there was constantly, I'm waking up. My Gabriella, my daughter, was 13, 14 at the time. So she was helping waking up for feeds. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, Mom, I have it. Go back to bed. And yeah, she was a little mama to him also. But it was, life changing because I went from, having a full-time job in corporate America and I was a stay-at-home mom, being a caregiver to my son.
Just putting some of the pictures up here now. Really cool. The Spider-Man. And I know you sent these pictures over and they were taken during at different points, but despite all of this, he's giving a high five to the Spider-Man there. It just the smile. I see a smile. It's
That's
just
his, if you look in the back on the wall that says Carter Strong, that was they had like memorial stuff you could write on the wall, like on the windows, and I made that for him.
it's just I mean it really makes you think as happy as can be. This is life is so precious and we talked about this earlier. What lesson or what do you want people to know about this because we in society we argue about little crap, we argue about this and that, but what really matters is that smile right there. That's what matters, right?
Yes, life is very short. I never thought I would have to be planning a funeral for my 4-year-old son. He's 4, and it's not right. And people just, like you said, they argue and fight over the littlest things. They don't speak to certain people just because of grudges they're holding. And you don't know. I didn't that day, that picture right there, that was
Yeah.
his transplant day. That was hours before he went down for his transplant. The other picture you just showed, that was hours. We were watching Super Mario Brothers together. He was, yep, hours before his transplant. That was him. He was healthy. He was smiling. And then within 24 hours, my life crumbled. And I never thought in my wildest dreams that this would happen. And life is too short to be mad, to be angry, to hold grudges to, with anybody, because you never
And,
know what you're going to wake up to.
and take nothing for granted. Yeah.
Nope. I take nothing for granted. I captured the majority of almost every day of my son's 4 years of life because I knew the possibility from his birth that essentially I would end up into a situation like this because he was sick. So
Yeah.
I captured everything because I want to remember every moment, every everything.
And I think the whole community is as well. And I'm going to put that link out there because people need to help you as well because you gave up your life and you would do it again. I would do it.
I
I think
would.
most good parents would do it, but we need to help you because the insurance companies definitely didn't help.
No.
Um, and you gave up everything for Karter. And so if anyone can, hit that link, press that link, help out all you can. And what's the last message that you want to say to people? Because it seems like so many people have come out and this shows that there are good people in this world.
This situation has restored my faith in humanity. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would have the love and the support from, my family, but not only my family, my friends, strangers, people that have never met me. They are just the continued thoughts, the prayers, the donations, everything is just it is overwhelming, and I want to say thank you to every single person that my son has touched. And he has touched and captured the hearts of so many people. And he is a warrior. He's a heart warrior. He is strong, and he will forever live on through me.
Thank you so much. And if you need anything ever, reach out to me or any of us, and I'm sure we'll do anything we can to help.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you for inviting me onto the show.